Good morning, everyone. As you may understand, it's not very common for the government to attend a presentation like this with such an important person as the ambassador of Australia. Usually people who have the responsibility of representing a country usually don't have such close relations with the government. But there are exceptions, and Ambassador Jane Hardy is one of those exceptions. It's difficult to find someone as important to the extent that we may consider her as a person who's not only very efficient but also a great friend of Spain, and one of the people who are helping the most to make sure that relations between our two countries, very far in geographic terms but very close, well, we have such good relations. Jane Hardy is one of the people responsible for this. Australia is a country that deserves all of our admiration. It's one of those countries whose macroeconomic data and the evolution in the last few years we would love to imitate, because Australia is a wonderful country, an economy that has a size similar to that of Spain. We're always in the 12th or 13th position. It's a country that knows how to use its natural resources, but it's much more than that. It's a country that has managed to generate a trade and service foundation in the area of Asia-Pacific, the most dynamic area. Without Australia, we would not be able to understand the growth in that area of the world. That is why, as I said, it's a country that we have a lot to learn from. Even though they are on the other side of the world, our relations are stronger and stronger. I would say that it's one of those areas where more and more Spanish companies are working, and it's one of the countries where Spanish companies are trying to go. In 3 years, we've increased by more than 50% our bilateral relations, trade relations, but it's amazing to see the degree of cooperation. Australia is a country to be discovered. It's a country that, when we talk about all the great international topics, Australia is a country that coincides very much with the ideas of the European Union. Maybe not 100%, but and they agree with the way we see. Well, we have more and more trade, and this is what brings prosperity to our nations. They protect freedoms and democratic systems. And I think we should see Australia as one of our friendly countries. I was going to say that if they wanted to join the European Union, would be delighted to welcome them. So thank you, Ambassador, and I'll give you the floor now because you are the protagonist of this meeting. It is a pleasure for me to be in this forum of a new economy. I'd like to thank its chairman, Mr. José Luis Rodriguez, for giving us this opportunity Thank you for inviting me to be here today. It's an honor for me to be introduced by Alvaro Nadal, Director of the Economic Office of the President of a Government. Alvaro Nadal has been very important and has played an essential role in the deliberations of the G20, a forum that Australia presides over this year. We always listen with great attention to his opinions and ideas. So thank you, Alvaro, for your very kind introduction. Today I would like to focus on G20 and how we can achieve our collective goals at G20 when leaders, amongst them President Rajoy, will meet at the G20 summit in Brisbane next November. Let me put our perspective into context. During the last 30 years, Australia has been very much involved in the development of the political and economic architecture of our region, namely Asia-Pacific. We want to make sure that this architecture is always connected to the European group and other regional and global groups, amongst them G20. We've observed that some of the main international organizations are fighting hard to adapt to the new realities. The emergence of new economic powers, particularly China, India, Brazil, and Indonesia, but also some countries that are developing very fast in our region, such as Vietnam, Philippines, Mexico, and Chile. We're witnessing a dramatic change when it comes to the global center of economic gravity, which is returning to its historical location, which is the Asia-Pacific region. Asian economy already accounts for 1/4 of world economic production, and it is expected that it will continue to grow until it accounts for more than half of the world economy by the year 2050. The Asian middle class could more than treble from 525 million people in 2009. This population may grow to 1.7 billion in 2020, and it might double again, reaching 3 billion by the year 2030. There are positive and negative aspects that we should think about. This huge middle class will demand different types of goods and services, many of which we produce in Western countries. But growth and productivity will not necessarily follow growth of GDP in these countries. In advanced economies, including our economy, GDP growth per hour worked has declined in the last 10 years. It's not clear at all whether productivity will continue to grow at the rate it did in past decades, even though Spain has been a very important example in this regard. We believe that increase of productivity in Spain and its growing exports in recent years are helping the country to come out of a crisis. Globally speaking, new patterns have emerged. A drastic change, dispersion of economic power, and weakening of the old geopolitical certainties. But most importantly, there is greater interconnection between the economies of the world. The global financial crisis have shown beyond any doubt that national borders can no longer protect its citizens, the citizens of a country, from the impact of other countries' policies and actions. Countries need to find new ways to work together in order to overcome the crisis. The current multilateral system has not worked very efficiently since the Second World War, but it is a system that reflects the reality of the post-war years rather than the reality of the 21st century. The G8 has given way to G20. G20 has proven to be more agile in responding efficiently to the global economic crisis. Financial institutions like the IMF we have to go a little further than that. Trade negotiations at the World Trade Organization in the Doha round have weakened, even though we did see some progress in the trade facilitation agreement of the WTO in Bali last December. Negotiations on climate change still need to generate the kind of global action that we need and require, and the reform of the Security Council of United Nations is further away now than ever. Regional institutions which have evolved in Asia in the last 30 years, as well as trans-regional groups like G20, will play an increasingly relevant global role when it comes to consultations and cooperation. Spain has been in the G20 process ever since it started as a permanent guest. The main Spanish companies are part of a group called B20, which has relations with G20 governments on behalf of the international business community. We're very interested in listening to your points of view, and we encourage you to provide practical ideas from the world of business through the Australian leadership of B20. The contributions of B20 to the deliberations of G20 help us understand and implement the keys for growth, employment, and sustainable prosperity. Spain also participates in some other non-governmental groups which have emerged around G20 ever since it started. These fora represent the interests and concerns of civil society, youth, think tanks, the academia, and the labor world. Just like B20, the contributions of these groups nourish the work of G20 by means of different meetings and consultation with its different working groups. And how does it all work out in practice? Well, you may have heard that there are doubts about whether G20 is able to coordinate policies with a future vision, bearing in mind that a different country presides over G20 every year. The mechanism of coordination is a troika, that is, host countries from the previous year, the current year, and the following year coordinate their efforts, thus covering a period of 3 years. This year, Australia is making a great effort to provide continuity and consistency to the key goals of G20. Please allow me to go back to the time when G20 started to prove its value. G20 was founded in 1999 by the ministers of economy of the greatest and largest economies of the world. The aim was to guarantee a balanced representation of countries from emerging regions around the table in view of their importance and weight in the global economy. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the Council of Cooperation of the Gulf, and the African Union were also guests of this organization. The great value of G20 lies in its direct links between governments. Leaders understood this, and they started to meet every year during the darkest days of the global financial crisis, that is 2008 and 2009. That crisis required an emergency global action and global leadership. Besides, many people have acknowledged that the summits of G20 in Pittsburgh and London were quite successful in different areas. They were able to stop the fall in the global economy, established a framework between countries to coordinate growth policies, and gave impetus to the reform of financial regulations, both at a national and global level. Ever since that successful beginning as a leaders' forum, G20 has established itself as a body that makes decisions and coordinate policies. And this is done between heads of government, finance ministers, governors of central banks, ministers of trade, and other members of governments, including development and cooperation agencies, investment and energy agencies. The agenda is full, and there are specific work channels between these civil servants as well as with the guest members. This year, as the host, Australia has invited Singapore and New Zealand to join us in our deliberations, together with Spain as a permanent guest, and the presidencies of ASEAN, which is Myanmar this year, the African Union, Mauritania, and Nepal, Senegal. We also have as annual participants the IMF, the World Bank, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the World Trade Organization, the Financial Stability Forum, United Nations, and the ILO. These groups attend the 5 meetings of economy and finance ministers of a G20 every year. This way, the main economic bodies that have decision-making power and which provide advice have the opportunity to meet on a regular basis in order to assess development and introduce reforms. The members of G20 account for 85% of the world economy, 76% of world trade, and 2/3 of direct foreign investment. We have both advanced and emerging economies, and more than half of the poor in the world live in countries of the G20, especially India, China, and Indonesia. The decisions made by the leaders of G20 have an impact on the way we do trade, the way we invest, and the way we relate with other people in the whole planet. Nonetheless, in spite of its economic power, G20 is still small and agile enough to face difficult issues, and it's better prepared to do it than larger or smaller global groups such as G20, which are unable to be as agile as G20. G20 has become a global leading organ, and this is what is required both in good and in bad times, because we need to manage both challenges and opportunities. Tony Abbott, the Prime Minister of Australia, said at the World Economic Forum in Davos last January that this year it's easier to be optimistic. Growth in the U.S. will be close to 3%, with the creation of 1 million new jobs. Growth in China is not as great as it was in the past, but it's still over and above 7%. And the Eurozone is finally growing again. And in June, Spain grew for the fourth consecutive quarter. But world economic recovery is still fragile. The taper of the United States is requiring a very skillful management. Almost 300 million young people in the world do not study nor work, and the world economy needs 30 million jobs, additional jobs, in order to go back to the employment levels that we had before the global financial crisis. The challenge everywhere in the world is to promote sustainable growth and employment promoted by the private sector, thus avoiding the idea of government knows best. There are many challenges that could benefit from the attention of the G20 leaders, but in order to take advantage of this opportunity as hosts of G20, Australia is focusing on the most relevant issues, those where we can start or continue making practical progress. We are building on the outcomes of the Russian presidency in 2013 and consolidating our main agenda around the following two topics. First of all, to promote greater performance in terms of economic growth and employment, and secondly, make sure that the global economy will be more resilient when it comes to facing future impacts. There's no room for self-complacency. Even though these themes may sound pretty straightforward and reasonable, they will take their time and will require a very detailed design and a lot of collaboration and commitment. In Sydney, last February, finance ministers of G20 and governors of central banks took a decisive step forward, and they decided to put a number to their aspirations. They committed themselves to implement policies in order to increase our collective GDP over 2% compared to the goal that we have with the current policies, and this is to be done in the next 5 years. In other words, these policies could generate more than $2 trillion in the real economic activity, as well as dozens of millions of new jobs. G20 countries have committed themselves to implement policies that will promote new private investment, especially in infrastructure. And for Spain, a country that has great infrastructures, the goal is not so much working in the country, but to taking advantage of the many opportunities that is construction, technology, and energy companies are taking advantage of in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, and also in Australia. Finance ministers of G20 also committed themselves to increase the number of jobs and employment. We should increase the participation of working population, and we want to increase trade all over the world. And Spain has a lot of things to contribute in this area, with a trade surplus in 2013 and a reduction in its public deficit, thanks to foreign investment. Trade and commerce and employment, not only have the potential of stimulating internal growth, but its impact is seen beyond that. That is, internal reforms in a country will have a positive effect in growth rates of other members of G20. And since the members of G20 account for 85% of world production, they will also have a positive impact on the global economy in the broadest sense of the term. Besides, finance ministers of G20 have agreed to work together in order to improve our tax or fiscal strategies. Australia wishes to follow the path of sustainability when it comes to its public budget. We're not going to impose to other members things that we are reluctant to do. In Sydney, finance ministers of G20 focused on monetary policies in advanced economies, and they acknowledged that monetary policy has to continue to adapt itself in many advanced economies, but it should be standardized in due time. And that time will depend on the prospects of price stability and economic growth. Some progress has been made when it comes to developing a global tax plan based on the erosion of taxable base or income and transfer of profits, as well as data transfer between jurisdictions. All our central banks at G20 kept their commitment, according to which monetary policies will continue to be gauged carefully and communicated with clarity. And they went further than that, making clear that they would exchange information, aware of the impact of their actions in the global economy. And this sent a very clear message or signal. We don't want surprises. In the last few months, the Sherpas of G20, such as Alvaro Nadal, who are personal representatives of their heads of government, set the basis for policies, trying to reach consensus in issues that will be discussed at the Leaders' Summit next November. They're trying to understand better some fundamental regulatory issues in order to achieve economic growth. Things like investment in infrastructure, trade and competition, employment policies that include the participation of working population, and changes in energy markets and their connection with economic growth. All the members of G20 are working on a national growth strategy. That is, they're trying to explain the framework and the objectives of their internal policies, designed to reactivate sustainable economic growth, productive growth, and thus contribute to the goal of increasing global growth by more than 2%. 2%, apart from promoting development. We're very much aware that there will be challenges and strategies that will be different in each country. There's no single solution for all. But we need to understand that all the members of G20 agree on the main issues, and they all have a goal of achieving real growth. We have collaboration and consultation mechanisms. We don't want just a very strict drafting of treaties. Design and implementation of international law takes decades, as the European Union understands better than any other member. Today, in spite of our different characteristics, interests, and challenges, we need a faster and more flexible way to help our countries achieve our shared global goals. I need 5 more minutes. Today, with our different characteristics, the most immediate priority of the Australian presidency of G20 is to focus on how to complete recovery after the economic crisis. As Prime Minister Abbott said in Davos, G20 is an organization of people, not governments. Our task is to create opportunities so that citizens of G20 countries and citizens of countries that are not members of a G20 can create better lives for themselves. But under this challenge, there are longer-term issues that we need to consider, things that we must resolve if we really want the growth that we have today to be sustainable in the future. How can we travel efficiently and quietly in the midst of all the economic and geostrategic transformations that are taking place nowadays? And how can we give shape to institutions that generate truly global answers to the challenges that we face collectively? Australia is very happy to collaborate with Spain this year during the presidency of G20. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the effort you've made this morning, addressing us in Spanish. Thank you. And now you may speak English if you want. We have simultaneous translation. Let's begin with the first questions. Some days ago, an Australian delegation came to Spain, led by the Minister of Trade and Commerce of your country, and they were received by our King and Mr. Villarmir. What will be the practical consequences of that trip, where our Minister of Defense also participated? What will be the practical consequences?
Business people always are very good at practicalities, and we were very pleased that this business group, which represents the biggest names in Australian corporate life and some former politicians, came with our minister, because it demonstrated the focus that our government has on ensuring the practical ideas of the people who conduct the business are there in the discussion when governments are are looking at their policies. The practical consequences, well, we have already the biggest Spanish companies operating in Australia. Various ones have been more than a decade. What we find is that those companies are bringing in their wake various other smaller Spanish companies. We have already 150 billion worth of infrastructure projects that are approved by the government and are ready to go ahead, largely in transport and roads and some energy production. And we have a deficit of another $700 billion worth of projects to roll out in Australia, about $400 billion worth in the next 5 or 6 years. So this is a huge market. Our needs are very great. We have a continental country. So these companies in Australia were talking to some of their counterparts here in Spain about how they can cooperate in what are largely the public-private partnerships. These are competitions for infrastructure rollout run by our state governments. So there are several important practical outcomes to come of this, even if there's no specific government-to-government agreement. I mean, the agreement, we have in place all our commercial and investment agreements and tax agreements which should help these companies do well in Australia. So the practical outcomes are to come, including some of the world's biggest infrastructure projects.
Muchas gracias. José Antonio.
Thank you. Another question. In what sectors and areas of Australia do you think there are more opportunities for Spanish investors and entrepreneurs? What industries, what projects, what regions of Australia are Spanish companies involved in? Could you give us some examples? Another question, similar question. What are the 3 most profitable investments in Australia? We're talking about the future.
I mentioned investment for infrastructure. Just to answer the first question, let me give some examples. Melbourne and Sydney are our 2 largest cities. They're about the same size each as Barcelona and Madrid, and they have important transport infrastructure needs. Firstly, there's a $7 billion program. It's in Victoria, in Melbourne. It's called East-West Link, and it's a major highway and transport corridor construction across a city which is wider than Madrid. And this $7 billion is the first phase, and 2 Spanish companies have been shortlisted. So one Spanish company will win this. And these 2 Spanish companies each have Australian partners. They're consortia who have bid in a process with the Victorian government. This will be announced fairly soon, who has won this project. After that, there's another $15 billion worth of that project to roll out in future years. Second example, there are several Spanish companies who've established their offices in the north of Australia. They happen to be in Brisbane, which is our most northerly developed city. Brisbane's about 2 million people, and it is a sophisticated regional city. These companies are looking at rail, construction, and energy, and this shows the interest in the north of Australia. We have an area across the tropical north of Australia. 1/3 of our continent lies within the tropics. This has never been developed. It takes a huge amount of investment to develop water and water energy and transport connections. And various of our neighbouring countries are investing huge amounts of money in this area. The government is looking very closely at this to ensure rational decisions, rational investment decisions, and a good layout to the infrastructure. But this area will develop very rapidly in the next 50 years. It'll probably develop rapidly in the next 10 years. This area is rich for agriculture, and as I said, it's a landmass which is approximately 1/3 of the landmass of the United States, say, and has never been developed. This has sustainable tropical agriculture, mining and other opportunities. So that's another example. A third example is in Sydney, of course. Everybody knows that Sydney is our biggest city. It's very well known. You can see the beautiful harbour. That harbour has its disadvantages. It means that the city is divided into many parts. We have 100-year-old infrastructure, ferries, a big bridge, or many bridges, and trains that service that city, and all of that is being redesigned. Spain has amongst the world's best train, tunnel and bridge makers, and we're very keen for those people to win projects in Sydney. I must also mention that we have, as you know, a big mining sector. The mining sector is still booming. Don't believe everything you hear. The investment in mining has tapered off, but some 500 mining sites have been developed with new investment over the last few years. These are coming into production. What the mining sites need is their own private infrastructure. They need rail and road, which sometimes is bigger and longer than some state governments have built. So there are examples of Spanish companies who have each won road, rail and other projects, including renewable energy projects to power and to service these mining sites. Look, the three future opportunities, I can't really specify. I think I've explained where we're going and what we need. We're still a country that's developing our infrastructure. We're very young, so as a developed country we have a lot of wealth, but we need a lot of help with infrastructure. So these are the areas that I would suggest Spanish businesses look at investing in.
Australia was included 8 years ago in the list of priorities of Spain when it comes to market development. In what lines and specific projects are the two countries working together to overcome the current crisis?
It's hard to answer that very specifically, but except to say that to refer to what I explained earlier, and that is that there are major companies already established in Australia, and they have. Here's where the supply chain idea comes into the Spanish presence in Australia. Those companies have needs which we in Australia can't fulfil. There are specialist water provision companies building desalination plants or water recycling plants, for example, who have specialist technology of their own or have downstream Spanish partners who provide that technology. And it's very good to see those secondary companies coming into the market. The second thing that we're very keen on is we are near the Asian region. Our population, 10% of our population speaks an Asian language, their first language. So you can see we're not only geographically, right next to Indonesia, but we actually have big Asian populations within our Australian citizenry. And we like to hear, and we do hear from our Spanish friends, that they invest partly because they are happy to be in a very established Western, if you like, market with European traditions, which they understand and they can operate in, and from there find other projects. And I know that because pipeline projects are very important in big construction companies, that is, they do 5 or 10 or 15-year planning. If there is a drop in activity, say 5 years away, they need to fill that drop with other projects. And I'm happy to say that there are specific examples of companies finding major projects in New Zealand, Singapore, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and even in some of the small Pacific islands in our region, from their headquarters in Brisbane or Sydney, Melbourne, Perth.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. We have another question from the Youth Council of Spain and also from the Union of European Federalists of Spain. Australia and Spain have been negotiating for 14 years a bilateral agreement for the work holiday visa, which will allow Spanish young people to work in Australia for 1 year at the same time that they study. When will this treaty be signed and when is it going to be implemented? What will be the restrictions in numbers and other restrictions? Why is it that young people from other countries like France, Italy, Argentina, Chile, why is it that they have enjoyed this visa for many years? Is it for political reasons?
We have had a work and holiday visa, unilateral visa with Spain, as with many other countries that have been mentioned, for many years. This is a very big tradition in Australia. We have our gap year tradition, or our tradition of taking a year out of university to travel and explore the world. And we have had this tradition, as you say, for many years with many countries. In 2010, when your king visited Australia, the Spanish side wanted a new kind of treaty, and we were happy to renegotiate the treaty. So those negotiations have, I must admit, have dragged on a bit. It's partly because I'm not sure, but I won't comment, except to say that when I arrived last year in Spain in February, a top priority from our side was we had already presented a draft treaty and our side wanted to push it forward. So happily we have, with the help of our Spanish counterpart colleagues and with the help of Ambassador Enrique Viguera in Canberra, who's a very effective ambassador for your country. The treaty we have is different to the old style treaties. It's more in line with what many other countries have with Australia, and that is it's reciprocal, it's not unilateral. Therefore, Australians and Spanish young people under 30 years of age can each enjoy this kind of treaty in each other's country. Maybe this is what held up the negotiations, the thought of having young Australians here, I'm not sure. But my argument was they're here anyway. They're getting into trouble at San Ferminis and other places. And it involves initially a cap of 500 each way per year, 500 young people under 30 years of age. They may, as you say, live in the country for 1 year in Spain or Australia. They must have a rudimentary understanding of the language, and that's decided by the immigration agent or official who interviews them. It's not based on a test. They must have some money with them to prove that they can sustain themselves if they do not get a job, and they must have a letter of recommendation. So these are the basic principles. The good thing about this treaty, this visa, is that they can work for 50% of the time that they're overseas. In Australia, we don't mind what they do, so long as it's legal. Our tourism industry, if any of you have travelled to any of our cities, you'll notice that every single waiter and every single barman is a young foreigner, usually a European, because their English is good. And so this is extremely important to our tourism industry and even our agriculture industry, people serving as chefs in faraway cities, etc. We don't mind if they work with Spanish companies. I think the Spanish companies are very interested in this. I must point out that in addition, there are 5,000 young Spaniards studying in Australia. When they go to Australia on a student visa, they can work for 40 hours for every fortnight. And on the minimum wage of $21 per hour, they actually can survive on this wage. We also have some other visas, such as internship visas, which are of interest to Spanish companies. So there are various ways that young people can already and do go to Australia, but we are very pleased that after having put in a draft text several years ago, at last we've got agreement, and hopefully it will be announced later this year.
Ángela Gonzalo, de Euro.
Another question. Australia has a problem similar to that of the EU, namely illegal migration. What should developed countries do to solve this problem that is causing human drama?
It's a very tragic situation. When I see the pictures of young African men trying to come into your frontiers at Melilla and Ceuta and in Lampedusa and so on, and we hear of the tragic deaths. Similarly, as an island continent, we have many hundreds of people trying to reach our shores each year. So there's been a lot of focus in the media on the Australian boat situation, the boat people. There are, in some years, and it depends on the monsoon season, and there are many dozens of boats, so hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people coming this way. But it's extremely dangerous, and like your European situation, over the years we've had terrible tragedies with 400-500 people drowning at sea, for example. We work closely with Indonesia on this issue. Most of the people coming on the boats do not come from Indonesia, actually. They come from other places, mainly in the Middle East and Sri Lanka at the moment. They have changed over the years. They pay people smugglers great deals of money, and then they're put on very, very unsafe boats and more or less sent out to sea, to an island called Christmas Island, which is Australia's farthest territory inside our national boundary. So it's a very bad situation. One must have compassion for these people, and I must point out that we do not have a Coast Guard in Australia. We never have. We have the Navy operates as our Coast Guard, so quite often you'll hear a rather sensational media story that the Australian Navy has been called out to blockade these migrants coming on boats. It's not exactly right. They always have. They always have been out there and saved many, many shipwrecks, actually. So they do a very difficult job, and we have, as you probably understand, offshore processing of these people in the islands all around our mainland. The island that they aim for, Christmas Island, is many hundreds of kilometres from the mainland, actually 1,000 kilometres from the mainland, some of our islands. So it's a long way away. So we have a lot of offshore processing, and we work with our neighbours in Papua New Guinea and other places to process these people. But I must point out that of all our refugee intake in Australia, this is a tiny, tiny percentage that come this way. The media story you don't see is that we take 20,000 refugees per year through normal UN channels. This is a huge amount. In addition, we have about, it depends on the year, between 200,000 and 300,000 regular migrants come each year and become permanent residents in Australia. So 200,000 to 300,000 per year. The makeup of our society is that we have the highest number per capita in the world of people born overseas. 1/3 of our population is born overseas, and the largest groups of those, currently it's Chinese, last year it was India, so it varies each year, but it is only this issue of people smuggling is something that has a different set of responses needed to the broader issue of migration. And we need people. We need people. We are a very, very open society, an immigrant society who is encouraging immigration to our country, but trying to discourage the people smugglers. So as to Europe, I cannot give you advice. Everyone's circumstances are different.
Rosario de Juan le pregunta si
Another question. Will Australia support Spanish candidacy to become a non-permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations?
We have spoken to the Spanish government about its candidacy, and we wish it very well. I don't really wish to discuss this in public. As you know, this is quite a strong competition, and we wish Spain very well in this competition.
qué pena que no nos dé algún detalle.
Pity that you won't give us any details. We're afraid, when you're so discreet and you don't want to say anything, I'm afraid, that's not good news. Another question, could you explain the content and the scope of a memorandum that both countries have signed in the field of sports?
This is a lovely MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, signed on the night before we lost badly to Spain in the World Cup, which we expected. This Memorandum of Understanding is between our sporting development groups. We have the Australian Institute of Sport and our various sporting clubs all around the country. And it's to do joint training and development of science, sporting science, including working together on drug detection, but the main emphasis is on joint training, ideas for training and development in sport. It's a very happy thing to do this with Spain.
Armando Llovera.
Another question. Something is moving when it comes to culture between Spain and Australia. Could you tell us about collaboration in the guitar festivals in Adelaide and Cordoba? Is the embassy working on other similar cultural cooperation initiatives between the two countries?
Pleased to be here in Spain, which is a world superpower in culture. It's a wonderful country which we have always looked up to in this regard. And there are various strands of our relationship that we are developing. The pioneers really were the Prado Museum. Miguel Zigarza, the director of the Prado, and several of our state governments have worked together to take beautiful, large exhibitions of the great Spanish painting masterpieces to both Brisbane in the first instance and then in Melbourne currently. There are 100 Italian paintings, masterpieces from the Prado. In Cordoba, I was there last night. I'm very pleased for this question. It's been a great joy to work on this for the last year. The Cordoba Guitar Festival was singled out by our Adelaide Festival, which is a very major world festival of arts of all kinds, has various strands to it. It also has a specialist guitar festival. These festivals take place currently in Cordoba, next week in Adelaide. The exchange between these two festivals will include artists, of course, winners of the competitions being showcased in each other's festival, and hopefully tourism packages which link the festivals. So this is a very important tourist venture for all of us, for Spain. Cultural tourism is something that has really almost saved you from the crisis in many ways. It's such a wonderful, strong sector here and very well done, and we aim to learn from that and to develop our own linkages. So there are various other things we hope to do in the future, and of course many think tank and university connections are being developed between Spain and Australia also.
Vicky Bendito.
Another question. what would you say about the IMF measures and their compatibility with human rights? What would be your... No, sorry. Are your suggestions taken as orders by countries for whom the economy is better than or more important than people? What's the role of human rights in G20? And another question from Sylvia Escobar. In 2007, Australia was one of the 4 countries that voted against the Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights, which was supported by the General Assembly of UN. In March 2010, Australia announced its adhesion to this declaration. Why this change of position?
Just on the G20, first of all, I mentioned many different groups that contribute to the ideas of the government in handling the G20, and that includes a development group, it includes think tank groups, it includes youth groups, and yes, the whole emphasis on economic development in the G20, of course, is based on the idea that development must be sustainable and it must be compatible with human rights. There's absolutely no doubt about that, and that's well documented in the G20 material, even though so much of it sounds like it's about the economy. Well, it is about the economy. That's what the G20 is about. But of course, it's for the development of society. That's what it's for. So that is well understood, and those groups have met in Melbourne and Sydney in recent weeks and are putting their ideas into the government stream even as we speak. So now for the second half of the G20 year coming up until November, they will be fed into the deliberations of the government part of the G20. On the Declaration of Indigenous Rights, I don't have the details with me, but I can speak a little bit about our Indigenous situation in Australia. And we have like many countries which were settled by Europeans in the 18th and 19th century, we have had a history of really serious decline and devastation for our original communities. In Australia, we had, for example, 900 language groups. These are very small Aboriginal groups scattered around a continent the size of the United States, to show you the distances, the size, the scale. Those 900, of 900 language groups, around 300 are still in existence and active as language groups. The population, Aboriginal population, is growing in Australia, and it is very modern. It's a very modern population. If you walk down the street of any of our cities, you won't be able to necessarily see who is an Aboriginal person, who is not an Aboriginal person. Excuse me, but we do have people living in very, very remote areas in very, very difficult conditions. So this classic case of a settler society where Aboriginal people, some of whom no longer can live in the remote desert or distant areas that they lived in as hunter-gatherer people, and are transitioning to modern life. So we are very strongly focused on the development of Aboriginal people, and the Australian government has a huge budget, has had for a century, huge budgets to try and assist the development of Aboriginal people. Some of the experiments over the years have gone wrong, but yes, it's the most important issue. It is the most important social issue for our country, and this has been recognised by all of our governments for many, many years. The importance of this is so great that the Prime Minister himself is the Minister responsible for Indigenous Affairs in Australia.
Muchas gracias. Es el momento de terminar.
Very much. We have to conclude. I'm sorry I haven't been able to ask any further questions. I apologize to those who posed the questions. And now José Manuel Morán, member of a Veritas Advisory Board, will take the floor. Thank you very much. Just two very brief words. For Veritas, it's a pleasure to attend such an interesting presentation. In your description of G20, you've shown us how complicated the world is, but also the desire that you have to overcome challenges and find new formulae that allow us to adapt ourselves to the different situations. Australia is an example, a role model, a country concerned about finding the best regulations, alternative and new solutions to changes in power and the fact that power is transferring towards Asia-Pacific. Avertis, a very important infrastructure provider, is following with great attention these opportunities that Ambassador Hardy mentioned, and we would like to participate. We lost the first set, but we do not rule out the possibility of winning a match. Thank you.